Welcome to the On Your Side podcast. I'm Gary Harper.
And I'm Susan Campbell. In this episode, we're taking our podcast on the road to Scottsdale for a peek behind the scenes where famous and maybe the not so famous will record their podcasts.
Celebrities, influencers, and other big names are already here for the Barret Jackson Auction. And of course, the Phoenix Open and Super Bowl will bring thousands of more people into town.
Many of those people need to record their podcast while they're in town, but they can't bring their podcast studio with them. So what do they do?
For the answer, we're talking to Brian Howie, the founder and owner of Podpopuli. It's a Scottsdale recording studio that will be open 24/7 Super Bowl week for well-known podcasters to record their show and get their message out there from the Valley of the Sun.
This is On Your Side with Susan Campbell and Gary Harper, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Okay, welcome to the On Your Side podcast. I'm Gary Harper.
And I'm Susan Campbell, and we are on location.
Hey,
we're not in our own studio.
This is like a first time for us.
I love it.
This is really cool.
Little field trip.
Getting out of our little podcast studio and going and doing it somewhere else.
We're in Scottsdale.
And we're going to talk about that.
Why
right
we're
now.
on location.
We're on location. We are here at oh boy, we got to start this over. Tell me, Brian.
Podpopuli. You lie.
Yes. Voice of the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Brian Howie joins us. He is the founder of
Podpopuli.
Yes.
Podcast for the people.
Gary's going to get it before the end of this podcast.
Easy for you two to say. You say it, Susan.
Podpopuli.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Well, I stand
good.
corrected.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we are here to talk about the podcast here, and you're going to be very busy, it seems like, during the Super Bowl, which is why we're here. Super Bowl brings out all kinds of people. I mean, we're just going to be jam-packed with people from around the United States. How do you get involved in it? What is your podcast here? What are you offering people?
So Podpopuli basically takes all the hard parts out of podcasting. We handle the recording, the editing, the distribution, the video, social media, all that kind of stuff so that people can just focus on creating good content. So there are so many dynamic and interesting personalities and podcasts that are recorded all over the world. And when they descend upon the Valley for a big event like the Super Bowl, or like we went through this with the Fiesta Bowl, and we go through this, they need a place to record where they can come in and do their thing and have some pros take away the hard parts and handle all that stuff for them. So we started to get calls a couple of weeks ago like, hey, do you have any availability here? And people were asking because they have such busy schedules while they're in town for 2 or 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. You got something at 11 p.m., 2 a.m., 3. And so finally I'm like, we're just going around the clock here to satisfy all the needs and to fulfill all the demand people have to get their podcast done.
And you're going to be full that whole time.
Yes, we are.
24 hours, right?
Pretty much. I mean, we want, I'm a very passionate podcaster myself, and I have traveled the world trying to find a place to do a podcast or somebody to record me or help me out or whatever. So I understand the frustration of finding a good studio to do it in. I don't want anybody to come to Phoenix and be like, I couldn't do my podcast there. That reflects badly on our community. So I'm like, we're going to open our doors for that time period, day and night, and try and fulfill all the podcast demand.
Can you give us some behind the scenes? Who are we expecting to be here doing some podcasts?
Well, there are, it used to be at Super Bowl every year, going back 30 years, there's always Radio Row, and they set up and they do radio interviews. But almost every radio personality also has a podcast. So we're doing a lot of radio personalities who need to do their podcasts. We're doing a lot of sports figures. We're doing a lot of entertainment people who are coming here to cover either the party scene or the ancillary activities that are going on there. So we really are getting all kinds, and that's fun for us, and it's interesting for us. And, come through here all the time. We get all kinds of the famous and the not so famous, looking to share their voice and their message and their brand.
It's quite the business model to have a place like this where you can come in and do your podcast, and you do all the heavy lifting. The people basically just sit down and just do their podcast.
Yeah, if you can just focus on having the conversation you want to have and getting the message out and sharing your voice, a good podcast audience feels like a community. And the more that the distractions are taken away, that you don't have to be like, oh, I got to take that out, I got to edit, I forgot to hit record, how does my mic sound, all that kind of stuff, the better that the content is created. That's how I got into podcasting. I had somebody do that for me. And so our business model is sort of to allow individuals and brands and business owners to be able to spread the word without worrying about the technical parts.
Radio personalities and athletes, I totally get why they would want to use you as a podcast place to kind of do their business. But the not so famous people, why would they want to do? I mean, they have to do their podcast, or they're just that addicted?
It depends. If you're a dog lover and you want to connect with other dog lovers, podcasting is a very intimate medium. A voice in the head is a very powerful thing. If you have a brand, if you have a passion project, podcasting now is sort of a ubiquitous way for people to really connect with people who are interested and passionate and curious about the same things that they are. I always say that a good podcast, they shouldn't just listen and think that's you. They should listen and think, that's me. She's me. She understands what I do. And so podcasting is a way to connect with your tribe and people of similar interest. Pretty much every business has a podcast now. Trader Joe's has a podcast. Coca-Cola has a podcast. Small businesses, it's a good way to establish yourself as sort of the main voice or the main influencer in your community. I can't tell you how many real estate and legal podcasts we have. If you have a billboard, you need to have a podcast. You know?
Yeah, right.
I like that. Well, how do you measure the success of a podcast? I mean, do you have to have a certain amount of listeners to be successful? How do you kind of gauge?
Part of our process is we sort of work backwards when we produce these podcasts. We try and first determine who is the audience you're trying to reach and why. And some people are trying to reach a very niche audience, and some people are trying to cast a big net and get as big an audience as possible. What are you trying to get out of doing a podcast? What do you want your audience to get out of podcasts, and so on and so forth? Some people want to do a podcast because they want to monetize it and make a lot of money. Some people are looking to get one client. Some people are looking to establish themselves as a voice, a main influencer. And some people are just looking to connect with like-minded people. So everybody has different goals. There's some very, very large audience podcasts who record out of here and record everywhere. And there's some people who are like, I don't care if anybody listens. These are conversations I want to have with people, and it's a way to connect with them and sit across the table and have it. So everybody's got different goals. Everybody's got different, but sort of the bar to entry, it used to take a whole lot of downloads and a whole lot of listens to really move the needle on podcasting, because analytics have gotten better and distribution has gotten better. That bar has kind of gone down. So they really are accessible to everybody.
We got the Super Bowl coming up. We have waste management coming up. It's going to be a very exciting
Perfect
time.
Storm of fun.
It really is. And making money.
And making money.
Right.
Yeah.
There's going to be people walking around everywhere in Scottsdale, and they're going to be walking, past this big window right here, looking in, going, what in the heck are they doing? I want to do this. You're going to have to make appointments and reservations and stuff like that. You just can't walk in.
Yeah, we are. You can't, we normally, if we're not so busy, people come in and say, what do you do here? And then we spend some time creating. Pretty much it's going to be around the clock. But we want people to, all of our locations have this sort of big storefront, sort of like the Today Show, and people can watch and take pictures and feedback. And, we want to sort of break down that wall between podcaster and audience as much as possible.
Right. We were talking earlier about some of the podcasts that are recorded here. I'm going off script a little bit here, but
go at it. You always do.
I do. I know. Here I go again. We were talking about some of your more popular podcasts.
Yeah.
Name a few, and why are they popular?
Well, a good podcast really understands that there's an audience out there for whatever it is. One of our, I don't even know if it's surprisingly popular that we do out of here. It's called Secrets of a Sugar Daddy. And I
love the title.
It's a great title, and they share the secrets of a certain lifestyle that people may or may not be interested in. We have one called The Housewives of Golf, who does their podcast here. They're interested in two things: the Real Housewives shows and golf. And they've blended those two to create a really big community to sort of tap into. We have a podcaster here who does a show called The Greatest People You've Never Met. And he has the ability to find whatever it is interesting in anybody. So he might be at breakfast and the waiter says something and he's like, I want to talk to you about that. And they might be on here. So it could be a famous person. It could be somebody he just encounters. And that podcast is really blown up. It's really good.
I mean,
that's like peeling back an onion. I mean, you start with one subject that really intrigues this guy, and then he just goes off.
I always say that a good podcast is sort of formed at the intersection of passion and curiosity. It's not information. People are like, I need to give information. Information comes from passion and curiosity. So if you are passionate about a subject and you are curious to the point where you want to continuously learn more, and you're not just, sharing expertise, because expertise makes a podcast sound like a webinar, and you don't want that. It makes it sound like a book on tape.
Yeah.
But being able to be like, I'm taking this audience along on a journey, on a ride, and we're going to discover things together. That's what makes a good podcast, and we have a lot of those people in here.
You have to have some duds too along the way.
We do. I don't want to name names. There's some that I'm like, I don't know what that show's about. I'm like, I don't even think that's a show. I think we're just talking. I don't know what the name of it means. I don't know whatever. But there's a lot of people know what they know, and just because I'm not the audience for it doesn't mean there's a podcast here called Technically Drinking. Those guys like two things. They like nerd culture and they like craft beer. So they will have a beer and they might break down 90 seconds of Star Wars over a course of an hour. And it's big podcast because I
think there's a popular TV
I think
show
my
on
husband actually listens to that.
Yeah, so there's some really big,
that might be embarrassing for me and him.
Podcasts here. We do a podcast called The People's Proof. It is all about bourbon. They don't recognize any other beverages besides bourbon.
I love it. People's Proof.
And so they dive into what they like and why they like it. It's a whole culture around it. We're here to create an environment where that passion and curiosity can flourish. We want to be an incubator for that. And then people can, like I said earlier, cast that net and find 40, 50,000 people around the world who like what they like. I have a really popular podcast, and I have done that podcast. I've recorded in 13 different countries, and people show up to see it live. Mm-hmm. It's a way to reach people you never thought you would reach.
I want to circle back to Sugar Daddy.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
It's
a pricey hobby.
Well, it is, but I mean, so it's the same host, and does he have
same
guests?
host? He has a couple of different sugar babies, I believe is the technical term.
So the sugar babies show up.
Yeah, and then he might have a guy on who's also doing this. And how did you get into this lifestyle? And they break down every possible angle of this, from how do you have the discussion about the money,
right,
to discretion, to what are the rules, to how do you get a good relationship, all of these kind of things, and they break it down.
I mean, there's not a written contract; it's verbal.
No, but there's sort of like the people. If you're a not legit, you're called a splendid daddy.
Oh,
meaning if you're faking, see the terminology I pick up on here?
Yes.
Meaning you're pretending to have more money than you
really do.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff. So you're splendid daddy. See? Fun fact.
We got to get back to Super Bowl week. So you are going to be open.
Some sugar daddies here for that.
Yeah, right?
I'm
my
sure,
goodness.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit blushing right now. So we're going to get back to Super Bowl.
Oh, Susan, you have to ruin everything.
I know. I'm no fun.
I know.
What does it cost to do something like this in your studio?
It depends. If somebody's just doing a one-off with all the bells and whistles, the video and everything, it's about $100, $150 an hour. And like I said, we handle the editing, the distribution. We'll pull social media clips out of it so they can share and all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit less if somebody does an extended package over the course of a year. Probably averages about $75, $80 per show. It's a little more if somebody wants something a little more involved or that. But that's about the average of it. And we help not just with the recording and distribution and editing, but we also creatively consult with them. We help them with the marketing. We want people to grow their podcast and find the audience. So we do a lot of cross promotion across. We produce about 300 different shows a week, and we try and book each other on guests on each other's podcasts, because podcast audiences tend to navigate over to other that's how they tend to discover it. You know? I got a big chunk of my audience from guesting on some really good podcasts, and those people.
Well, it's a cross promotion there. I mean, they hear you, and then they want to hear.
Like, I want to hear more about him. I like what he's got to say. Let me follow him back to his podcast, and that's how podcasts kind of grow.
Absolutely. What's the feedback you're getting with the upcoming big events hitting the metro area? A lot of people say, "Hey, listen, I need to book this."
Yeah, and there's some. All over the country, there's a lot of big event sort of pent-up frustration that they couldn't do it. The Super Bowl was in Los Angeles last year. Los Angeles could not, COVID was still a thing. The parties were not quite going. This is the year, especially with that, like I said, the perfect storm of the golf tournament and the Super Bowl coming to town. sometimes it depends on the teams. I'm a New York Giants fan. Hopefully,
you still have your fingers crossed.
I do, but even so, there's a lot of big. I mean, for the city, I think you probably want Philadelphia to make it because they travel and they'll all be here. But there are people who moved here from all over the country and all over the world who are really excited about the big event. And Scottsdale really is. I know the game's in Glendale, but Scottsdale is really sort of the social heartbeat of a lot of the big events that go on around here. So we're excited about it.
Glendale's going to be upset with you right now.
I'm aware, but I don't think that's news to Glendale.
Yeah.
And I went to the Super Bowl. Again, I was a Giants fan. The Super Bowl was there in 2008 in Glendale when they played the Patriots. So I was there, but, I stayed in Scottsdale.
What is your head telling you, not your heart, but your head? What's your head telling you about who's going to be in the Super Bowl?
I think it's going to be the Chiefs and the 49ers.
Oh, really?
And they were just in a Super Bowl against each other a few years ago.
Even with the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
He's like magic right now.
I think they're that good. And the good thing is right here, right down the street, is the home of the San Francisco Giants, spring training. And there's a lot of Bay Area people already here who know the drill, how to get down here, whatever. And and the Chiefs fans, they travel big time.
Right. All right, Brian, listen, thanks so much for being on the On Your Side podcast. I know a lot of people want to find out more about you and your company, which is
PodPopuli. You can go to podpopuli.com, PodPopuli.com, or shoot us an email, podpopuli@gmail.com, and we'll hook you up.
Yeah. And even if you haven't done a podcast before, this might be a cool way to kind of like dip your toe in the water.
Like I said, we have all ages, all demographics. We've got kids as young as 9 doing podcasts. They're really good at it.
Tell me real briefly about that.
We have a girl who who hosts a podcast called Little Sisters. She is a little sister. She's mad about being a little sister. She interviews other little sisters about how difficult big sisters are. So these little sisters might be 65 years old, and they share this bond about, like, I know what you're thinking about. My big sister used to do this and do that. It's a really good podcast.
That is adorable.
Right. So there's that. We have one called Around the World. She's 10, and she interviews people from somebody who doesn't live in her community.
Yeah.
They could be from Venezuela, they came from China, and she sits down and she's like, tell me about the foods, tell me about the she's really good at, because curiosity is such a good thing in kids.
Yeah, you answered my question. I'm like, at that age, is she good? But it sounds like
she's really good. We have 2 different autistic kids who do podcasts, and hearing their voice in the headphones really helps their communication. It's actually sort of benefited them off microphone too. It's just really rewarding. It's a good way to build confidence and communication skills no matter what age you are.
Well, Brian, thanks so much for inviting On Your Side into your podcast studio. I think it's a great idea, and I think you're going to make a lot of money during the Super Bowl.
Oh, now you made me blush.
Yeah, well, we hope you do anyway. And so next time, maybe we'll come back, right? I like
or
this
you
place.
can come to our studio.
I would love to.
We could do lunch. We'll have lunch delivered.
There you go.
Yeah, I'll bring some donuts.
Brian, have a good one. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The On Your Side podcast is produced by Brad Denny. Our audio engineer and editor is Todd Martin. Segment producer is Colin Stanton. And I'm Gary Harper.
And I'm Susan Campbell. If you have a problem you can't resolve, maybe we can. Send us a message through azfamily.com or our AZ Family mobile app. Look for the On Your Side section and leave us a message. Thanks so much for listening to the On Your Side podcast. And if you like it, leave us a review. We'll see you next week.
On Your Side is on Good Morning Arizona every weekday morning at 6:45 and 7 o'clock, and every weekday evening on Good Evening Arizona at 4 and 5 o'clock. You can also catch it on Arizona's Family News at 9 on 3TV every weeknight.